Have you ever thought about making your own podcast? It seems like that's the in thing right now. Well, do I have the people for you? Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and extremely easy to use. And now, Anchor will match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid for podcasting right away. To get started, go to anchor.fm/start. Once again, that's anchor.fm/start. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the J. Stevens Podcast. This is episode number 93, dedicated to a man who wore number 93 and terrorized quarterbacks during the glory days of the Indianapolis Colts, Mr. Dwight Freeney. And as always, thank you for listening and downloading to another episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we have Mr. Cody Felger, co-host of the Bring the Juice podcast, coming on, join me to talk about the Indianapolis Colts. I first came across Cody, that is, about 3 to 4 years ago on Twitter. I'm pretty sure it was during a game, because I live tweet during games. Sometimes people like tweets and they are shown on my feed. They retweet things. Someone may retweet someone else's tweet and they show up on my feed. I'm not sure exactly how the connection came into existence, but it was a good one. I enjoy following Cody on Twitter, especially with me being a Colts fan. It was great just having him and seeing him, getting what his ideas are, seeing if our ideas match, and just seeing what two Colts fans think about the team that they love, the Colts. And then after I found Cody on Twitter, I saw that he was writing for Indiana Sports Coverage, writing about the Colts. Another guy named Grant Afseth wrote about the Pacers, and that same website covered different teams in the great state of Indiana. And then before I knew it, Cody started a podcast. Okay, cool. You love the Colts. You were writing for a little bit, and now you're podcasting. Let's see how this thing goes. He talked a little bit about that during our conversation. And hey, his podcast is amazing. If you're a Colts fan, give this guy not just a follow, listen to his stuff. Week in, week out, COVID-19 going on or not, reacting to draft pick, reacting to trades, reacting to free agent acquisitions, reacting to different things, reacting to games, analyzing players at a very, very high level. Him and his co-host Derek Larger do a phenomenal job with that. Cody Felger does a great job, and he does an even better job here on the podcast talking about the Indianapolis Colts. Two things very quickly before we get to that conversation. The podcast hotline is always open, 850-462-5442. Once again, the podcast hotline is always open, 850-462-5442. Give it a call. Let your voice be heard. Also, the podcast 100th anniversary is right around the corner. This episode 93, episode 100 is not that far away. The guest for that episode is already booked. It's a guy that used to write for CBS Sports. I was lucky enough to find his email, lucky enough to connect with him, and he said yes on the spot. I want to thank him. Not saying who it is just yet, but I am very excited about it. Trust me, it's a huge milestone. A lot of podcasters, they don't get past episode 1. They don't get past the first 2 to 3 weeks. It's tough. It's not easy. It's not easy putting your thoughts out there, no matter what field, no matter what you're talking about, and allowing other people to hear your ideas, hear your opinions, and then critique you at the same time. It's not easy. It's not easy being a solo host. It's definitely not easy. It's not easy doing 2 episodes a week, sometimes 3. It's not easy. It's time consuming, but it's fun. A lot of fun. We also just celebrated the 1-year anniversary of the J. Stevens podcast this past Tuesday. Thank you to all those that commented on social media. Thank you so much. The kind words mean a lot. The train is not stopping. If you've been on since episode number 1, thank you. If you have not been on since episode number 1 and you just got on, thank you. This train's going to keep moving, getting better guests, getting better content. I want to thank you for listening, you for supporting, you for reviewing. Thank you so much. This grind is fun, and it's not going to stop. Let's go ahead and take a trip to Bluffton, Indiana, to enjoy my fun conversation with Mr. Cody Felger, co-host of the Bring the Juice podcast. Hey, Cody, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, no problem, no problem. Before we get into the Colts and everything that you dive and you go deep into all the time, every single week, I want to ask you, how are you doing, your family, your friends? How is everyone around you doing during COVID-19?
Yeah, a little bit bored. I know a lot of people are. But no, for me, it's been good. I've been, I work right now, just kind of a part-time job, seasonal thing at Lowe's. And so fortunate for me, I've been able to still, despite the craziness and pandemic, I've been able to work and I've been able to, do something and not go stir crazy in my house. And so it's been good, man. It's been a lot of fun. It's obviously been a lot different, which is, it's just crazy how this whole thing has flipped the sports world and just the world in general, on its head. But overall, I would say, man, it's been good. It's been good. It's been different, but it's definitely I've definitely haven't enjoyed the journey and been able to crank out a lot more Colts content. That's been a blessing of this having to be at home all the time. So, yeah, it's been good, man. Overall.
Good to hear. Good to hear. What have you done? Any picked up any hobby to kind of pass the time to kind of just cope with the extra downtime you have right now during COVID-19?
Yeah, it really has been podcasting. And as cliche as that sounds, it's been really good because, when that happened, it was right around the time of free agency starting. So we were able to crank out a lot of content, a lot more than we had been doing, get it out to, people. And, it's just been a good thing now. And Derek and I have been working our butts off to try to provide content. And so been doing that. Just really been working and doing that. And that's really been it at this point. Not too exciting and not too crazy here, but living in Indiana, it's nice because things have started to open up a little bit, and so hoping that things can start progressing the way we hope they can. And so, yeah, so overall it's been different, but it's been a little boring. But I've been podcasting a lot, which has certainly helped me, kind of avoid the craziness that's been happening.
Absolutely. You mentioned free agency, and this is when all of this stuff kind of started. Free agency started, and in free agency, the Colts happened to get a quarterback. Now, they got other pieces. They did make a trade with the 49ers, bringing DeForest Buckner, and Xavier Rhodes came over as well. But everyone was wondering, would Phillip Rivers go to Indy? There was a lot of people saying Phillip Rivers or Tom Brady would go to Indianapolis to be the Colts, and ultimately Phillip Rivers to Indy was that match there. What were your initial thoughts when that transaction took place?
Yeah, I think a little bit people were kind of shocked because we haven't Chris Ballard make a move like that in free agency, trading first off DeForest Buckner, trading a high draft pick for just a single player, and then also signing a quarterback that, statistically last year didn't have a great season. It was one of his down years. But, overall, as I've kind of, heard Frank Reich, Nick Sirianni, Chris Ballard, it makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels now as opposed to even a Tom Brady. I mean, there's just more familiarity with that system. A lot of things that, and you mentioned, with this virus, like people haven't been able to be with each other, haven't been able to be in the facility. And so I know Frank Reich kind of talked about how Phillip Rivers already knows like 80% of the playbook, which certainly will help you and help the Colts, going into this season. You don't have to get a quarterback who you're not familiar with, who's not familiar with you. And I think overall it's a good, solid move. Obviously, it's not your future move, but it's a good, solid move for the here and now, especially, if you're wanting to groom a guy like they drafted in Jacob Eason in the 4th round. If you believe you have something there, and then you can have him sit and learn behind a potential, Hall of Famer one day.
Yeah, I know. It's very interesting. I live here in Indianapolis. My dad and I went to, I think it was the Broncos and Colts game last year. It was downtown Indy. Somehow Brissett eluded Von Miller in the end zone. I have no idea how that happened. And then threw the dart to the sideline. And after the season, I was on the train. In the middle of the season, I was on the train. Keep Brissett. Let's keep Brissett here. Give him at least a little bit more year. But then as the season progressed, it was almost like Brissett's going to be out of there. He may be able to play next year, but he won't be the long-term fix. Were you surprised that they didn't give the ball to, or they're not planning to give the ball based off the signing to Brissett this upcoming season?
Yeah, no, I really wasn't. I felt like you should upgrade from Brissett. Obviously, you can point to some situations and some things that happened. Obviously, that injury in that Pittsburgh game played a huge role into the second half of the season, but in amongst other things like injuries. But, overall, I feel like the Colts and what they want to do is they want to push the ball down the field. And the Colts had statistically one of the worst passing offenses last year in terms of the vertical threat. I believe it was like 28th or something around there. And so, no, I wasn't surprised that they brought in competition. I just thought they might draft a quarterback and roll with Brissett, but, certainly bringing in a guy like Rivers, a guy who pushes the ball down the field, kind of fits more of what Frank Reich has wanted to do with his offense. I think it makes a lot of sense. You keep Jacoby Brissett. I think I was more surprised that they kept Brissett at first just because of the money that it's going to cost to keep him as your number 2 quarterback. But no, overall, I wasn't surprised that they moved on. I know they said they liked Jacoby, but I was like, okay, but at some point you have to have a little bit of common sense and realize, as good as Brissett has been in spurts, you need a long-term answer there at quarterback. And, you paid Brissett. You gave him an extension this last year. You backed him for the 2019 season saying, hey, we believe in you. And unfortunately, he didn't deliver when he was supposed to in certain points. And ultimately, that's, a big reason why I think the Colts missed the playoffs as opposed to, going to the playoffs for the second consecutive year. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of Brissett and kind of what the Colts, how they kind of handled the situation, how I felt like they should have handled the situation. I wasn't really that surprised, I guess, that they decided they wanted to upgrade, in a couple different positions to address that question.
I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about Brissett playing or not. And then there are Colts fans out there, and I'm sure there are some out there possibly listening to this podcast right now. They're saying, Cody, we know you follow the Colts, but the Colts brought in a guy that had, as you said, possibly his worst statistical season that he has ever had in his career. Why bring him in right now? There's Colts fans wondering that. Why bring him in right now when he's just coming off possibly his worst year in his career?
Yeah, and those are valid points. I mean, I don't want to discredit that. I mean, I think that is notable. Those interceptions, Frank Reich has acknowledged that's not acceptable. That's way too many interceptions, way too many turnovers. I think there are some factors, though, that you can kind of defend and kind of, rationalize a little bit what the Colts were thinking. And I think first is the offensive line. I know that Nick Sirianni just had a press conference and said the big reason for Phillip Rivers why he decided to come to Indianapolis, he named out every single one of the Colts starting 5 offensive linemen. And I think that speaks volumes, especially to, first off, how good he thinks the Colts offensive line is, and then also how bad the Chargers offensive line has been in the past few years. And so I think that's a big factor. Obviously, the running game really dipped from 2018. I mean, beyond 2019, the season before, Phillip Rivers was really good, and the Chargers were one of the best teams in the AFC. And so, their running game went from the 18th best in the league to the 28th best in the league. And I think that's significant as well. I think there are just different factors. But, there are some things like he had some good receiving options in Hunter Henry, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. So those are factors. And I do hear people, if they're saying this doesn't make – I don't like that, I totally get that. But I think that the reasons why the Colts felt like they could bring him in is just the familiarity with the system, like I mentioned. They feel like they can give him a better protection. They feel like they can get him a better running game, maybe even some better play on defense as well. So I think those are all the factors why the Colts believe, with those connections with Nick Sirianni, the offensive coordinator, and then Frank Reich, who have both worked with Rivers. I think that connection is the reason why the Colts pulled the trigger here. And kind of a move that's a little bit uncharacteristic of Chris Ballard from what we've seen. But, overall, I think it's a move that makes sense. And I think Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni certainly had a lot to say into this decision for sure.
Absolutely. And in the draft, the next sequence of events that was there in this offseason was the draft. And Phillip Rivers was signed before, I forget if they were able to sign him before the draft or not. I know it was kind of a hiccup there with physicals and the virus and not being able to get people to get physicals there or not. But then the draft happened, and as a Colts fan, I was kind of shocked. I'm thinking, okay, well, we already got DeForest Buckner via trade for basically the 13th overall pick. And then lo and behold, the next few picks, even after Jacob Eason, it seemed like Ballard is gearing up for a win now mentality. What kind of things were you did anything surprise you, or what surprised you during the draft?
I definitely think the Jonathan Taylor pick surprised me a lot. At first, because I'm like, you have Marlon Mack, you have Nyheim Hines, you like Jordan Wilkins. Why would you make this pick? And it's not like he fell to them either. They traded up for him. I think they gave away like a 5th-round pick or something like that, which isn't that much, in retrospect. I mean, they gained another 5th-round pick later on. But, you trade up for a running back who, Jonathan Taylor is a phenomenal running back. He was a phenomenal running back at Wisconsin. But, for me, you just kind of look at how that position has evolved over the years and how it seems like up to this point, Chris Ballard has kind of realized that running backs are pretty expendable now, unfortunately, in the league. And beyond this, I mean, his highest pick was 4th round for all his running backs. And you even could find a guy like Jonathan Williams undrafted. So I think I was a little bit surprised at that. I think Chris Ballard has done things we have not seen in moves that say, if Chris Ballard made these moves last year, I would have been like, okay, it's probably a national media article saying that Chris Ballard should make these moves in a little bit. But, ultimately I don't dislike the move. I think Jonathan Taylor is a phenomenal running back, man. When you have 2,000 yards back-to-back seasons, you have over 20 rushing touchdowns last year. I mean, that's something you got to tap into. And he's just the guy I think that brings your running game now to another level where it hasn't been. Frank Reich talked about, at the start of that 2019 season, I think one of his goals for the Colts offense was to be a top 5 rushing attack. And I don't think the Colts were top 5. They were top 7. I think they were number 7 overall, which is still pretty good. 7 out of 32, you'll take that. But Frank Reich, I think, and Chris Ballard has really doubled down on, we want to be a top 5 running attack. And, part of that is, going back to Phillip Rivers, taking some pressure off him, allowing him to have a supporting cast like that. So I think overall, if I had to make one selection that I was just like kind of shocked at, it was probably that one. One that I didn't really understand was more the Robert Windsor pick there, the guy out of Penn State defense. It's crazy. You trade for DeForest Buckner, you sign Sheldon Day, you have Grover Stewart, Danico Autry. I just don't know where he's going to fit in. Maybe, Autry and Lewis maybe play some more defensive end outside for you. But I think that was a move I was like, I felt like there's other positions where you had a better chance for a player to make the roster. I guess that was kind of my thoughts on kind of my surprises or picks I didn't really love. But overall, I thought it was a pretty solid draft for the Colts all the way around, especially considering they didn't have a first-round pick.
Michael Pittman Jr., a guy, I think I was listening to JMV in Indy, and I think he was it was either him or T. Higgins, and I believe Michael Pittman was JMV's pick for wide receiver. If we could go with one of those two, ultimately that's who Chris Ballard went with. And it was odd because I was listening to an interview or seeing something on Twitter, and he said that he wanted to go to the Colts the whole time. Like he was wishing and he was hoping that the Colts were his pick. How do you see him fitting in with T.Y. Hilton and the other wide receivers in Indianapolis?
I certainly think in terms of a compliment to T.Y. Hilton, I think he's a really good compliment. He does, he's big body receiver, 6'4", 215, 220 around there. He's a receiver that the Colts have not really had. I mean, you could count Devin Funchess, I guess, but he played like not even an entire game. But this is a guy now that you've invested highly into that now changes your offense. And I don't know, Jay, I don't know the last time I've seen the Colts have a wide receiver this physically gifted as Michael Pittman in terms of height, his speed, his contested catch ability. I mean, yeah, he's just incredible. And another thing that he does really well is he catches the football and he doesn't drop it.
No, he doesn't.
Which I think is something that, as Colts fans, that's something we've witnessed, unfortunately, way too many times in the last decade outside of T.Y. Hilton. And so I think he provides a good compliment to Hilton. Sirianni really talked about how they want to make Hilton, want to keep Hilton as their primary weapon on offense. And so just adding a guy like Michael Pittman really just helps take the pressure off of Hilton. Allows him to get more one-on-one opportunities, which T.Y. Hilton loves, and also just gives Phillip Rivers a big body target, which he's loved in the past. You think Vincent Jackson, most recently Mike Williams. So he has some guys that he really likes a lot in those big body type of receivers. And I think Michael Pittman fits really well into what Phillip Rivers wants to do. And then, just finally giving T.Y. Hilton a compliment that I think the Colts have been looking for ever since Hilton was drafted in 2012. And so I really like this pick a lot. I thought undoubtedly on either side of the team, wide receiver was the biggest glaring hole. And I think he's going to fit really well. And also I think it takes a little bit of pressure off of Paris Campbell as well. He was a second-round pick last year and just kind of allows you now, to see what you have in some of those guys. Overall, I really, really like this pick. I thought it was a solid pick. I thought either him or T. Higgins would be a fantastic pick there. Obviously, T. Higgins went right before him. So, overall, I really like the selection of Michael Pittman a lot. I think he was undoubtedly the Colts' best player on their board, and I think you got him as a steal there in the second round. So, really, really like this pick quite a lot.
Jacob Eason, I was almost glossed right over the quarterback. You mentioned him earlier, Jacob Eason, out of Washington. A lot of people knock him, and they say, "Oh, you lost your spot to Jake Fromm at Georgia," but they don't know the entire story. When you get hurt, somebody comes in, they play very well. It's hard for the coach to give you your spot back. When Jake Fromm came in, and I believe at that time he took Georgia to the national championship game. Same thing with Tua and Jalen Hurts. There's another quarterback in my mind. It's escaped me right now, but it's very, very hard. Oh, excuse me, Tom Brady. When Tom Brady came in, Drew Bledsoe got hurt, so and they went on to win. So it's very, very hard for a coach to give your spot back when they just had a lot of success with the guy that took your spot or that replaced you. So Jacob Eason's very interesting in the pick for a lot of people, simply because there is Brissett, there is Phillip Rivers. Where is Eason going to fit in? Is he going to get reps this year? Is he not going to get reps? How is he going to get reps in practice? And so a lot of people are wondering why this pick. Is it worth it? And I think it's a perfect fit for this situation. You have a seasoned guy in Rivers. You have a guy in Brissett that's been on 2 franchises, and he knows how to work with the Belichick. He knows what works with the Reich and what Chris Ballard likes. And I think this is a great spot for Eason to be groomed and to get better and to really just be a better young quarterback at this point in time in his career. Eason with the Colts, how would you describe this situation for him?
Oh, I think it's a perfect fit. I agree with you totally there. I think that, in a perfect world, Jacob Eason's not going to see the field in some meaningful snaps for the Colts this year. And I think that's perfect for him. He's a guy that's relatively young in his football career. He's only played, I believe, 19 games, so he hasn't really played a lot in college. He's a guy that's physically, he's got all the tools you look for. He's got the big arm, biggest arm in the draft. He's a guy that, checks a lot of those boxes. And I think, one thing that I've said with Jacob Eason is if I was Jacob Eason, I would be like a sponge, and I would just be in Phillip Rivers and Jacoby Brissett's, hip pockets, asking questions after questions, just continuing to learn what it looks like to be, a pro on the field, yes, but also off the field. Because I know there have been some character concerns with Jacob Eason. That's been kind of a knock on him potentially. But, based off of what Sirianni has said, it seems like Jacob Eason's taken the right steps to becoming, a good pro for the Colts and a good pro just in general as a quarterback. So, yeah, overall, I think that Jacob Eason has a tremendous chance. I mean, it's really, ultimately it falls to Jacob Eason. Will he make this decision? Will he not? But if he does, he's set up so well, to be potentially the guy eventually to take over for Phillip Rivers. I mean, he's got a former quarterback in Frank Reich who can help him develop and just, continue to progress as a quarterback. There are things he's got to work on. There's a reason he fell all the way to the 4th round. And so, yeah, I mean, overall, I think this is the perfect situation for Eason where he's not going to be thrown into the fire right away. He's going to have a chance for, at least one season to kind of sit behind Rivers, sit behind Brissett, learn from Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni, and just grow as a quarterback, grow as a person. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for him, and he'll also get some game action, in the preseason as well, which will be good for him. But you look at these 2 quarterbacks ahead of him, right? And Jacoby Brissett, and also Phillip Rivers, 2 guys that are super competitive. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that's going to serve him super well to kind of see, how do you be, when you're very competitive? Yes, that's good, but also being a professional off the field, I think it'll just be tremendous. I think he's got some tremendous role models to look at and model and, learn from a guy that I think overall in Phillip Rivers, him and Jacob Eason, right, they do a lot of the same things in terms of taking risks, right? They throw balls that Jacoby Brissett wouldn't even dream of throwing. They're kind of gunslingers in a way, and I think that's a perfect situation for Eason to kind of see. I like how Phillip plays the quarterback position. I think we're very similar. Now, how do I learn to clean up some of the things that he does really well that I don't quite do well? And so I think it's a perfect situation overall, Jay. I really like this fit a lot, especially because I think he's a guy that a lot of people said he could maybe even fall into the 1st round. You get him here in the 4th round. He's got that kind of talent. Now it's just up to him to continue to learn and grow, and he's not going to be thrown in, which I think is going to be good for him. He's going to have a chance to learn and grow. And, yeah, overall, I really, really like this selection and this fit for the Colts.
Cody, I'm going to give you some of my personal opinion here. I personally believe, I wish that more GMs did this route like Ballard did with Eason. I'm not a big fan of drafting a rookie quarterback and then throwing him into the fire. And I know sometimes it's inevitable. I know some guys, they're made for that. And Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning were thrown into the fire and ultimately showed success. Andrew Luck, unfortunately, ended his career. Injuries really derailed that very, very quickly. But I wish a lot more GMs would take this route of getting a guy, say in free agency, there's a guy out there in the Rivers. He's on the backside of his career, the back 9, had maybe his worst statistical season, but he still was able to show he could come in, lead you, win more games than where you were last year, be better than the quarterback you had last year, and he wants to be there. And then right behind him, there's a guy that can learn from him and just watch him and show how to be a pro so that when Eason, let's say Eason is the starter next season, or Phillip Rivers plays 2 years, and Eason's the starter in year number 3 in his career. He's way more trained than the average quarterback nowadays. That gets thrown into the fire. Cody, I don't know about you, but that's kind of how I view it. I wish more quarterbacks were able to get this type of training, you may want to say, than just going into the NFL and being just dumped out there to say, hey, sink or swim.
Yeah. And I kind of like that just for all aspects of, when you think about when you start a new job, like I've had this situation, like, so for me, a little bit of personal thing. So I went to school for ministry, right? So I want to work with students. And so I am personally of the belief that I would want to go to a place that has an established person there, right? Who knows what they're doing. And, I would want to do that as opposed to just being thrown into the fire. And I think, you see that in a lot of different jobs, like, going to trade school, sitting behind somebody for a while and eventually taking the reins when you feel like you're ready, as opposed to being thrown into the fire. And I know there's some concerns with Jacob Eason in terms of his character. And, I think that it'll be so good for him to not feel that pressure immediately coming into the league, feeling like he has the tools to do it. Now, Frank Reich and company, can they develop those tools and can they help him refine those tools? And so, overall, yeah, I really I agree with you. I think this is a good route to go. We haven't seen the Colts take this route since I don't know how long it's been, man. It's been a long time. 98 was when Manning was drafted, I believe. So it's been before then when they've had a quarterback sit behind another one. I wasn't alive when that happened. I don't think so. It certainly is different grounds for what the Colts have done, but I certainly think it's potentially a low risk, high reward thing here for getting a guy like Jacob Eason here in the 4th round.
Absolutely. And I think this next little transition, a guy in Easton who just got drafted to a guy that got drafted, I believe, 4 years ago now, in Malik Hooker. A lot of Colts fans are wondering, what were the Colts going to do with this 5th-year option? Were they going to extend it and exercise it, or were they going to decline it? They ultimately decided to decline it. And I was kind of up in the air when looking at this myself. I didn't realize it was right now. I had heard that there was a possible move with Malik Hooker, but I didn't know that, it was more contract-oriented for the upcoming season in year 5 of his career, not, trade bait, things like that, or cutting him down, things like that. But Malik Hooker is an interesting guy because coming out of Ohio State, everyone knew the potential that he had. Unfortunately, there have been injuries. We all remember, a lot of people remember last year, I think it was a Chargers game when he had that pick in the end zone, goal line going in. The Chargers had the ball. I think Malik Hooker picked it off with one hand. I may be wrong about that, but I do remember that play sometime last season. Malik Hooker's a guy that some Colts fans love. Some Colts fans, they don't dislike him. They just hope that he was showing more promise and things like that. What were some of your thoughts when they decided to decline his 5th-year option?
Yeah, at first I was, kind of a little bit shocked, honestly, just because 24 years old, he's got plenty of potential. Certainly has not been healthy all the way, throughout since he was drafted in 2017. I don't believe he's played in all 16 games in his first 3 seasons. So I was a little bit shocked the Colts decided not to pick it up, especially considering, if he goes out and balls out this year, right, then you're going to have to pay him a lot of money as opposed to just picking up his 5th-year option. But I think it just speaks, Jay, to kind of what the Colts think here and what they want out of their guys. They don't want potential. They want production. And I think that's a huge thing that, a huge difference between the previous regime and this regime is they're not going to hold on to a player too long, right? They're going to – if the guy's not producing, most of the time they're going to say, hey, you know what? Like we're going to admit we made a mistake here and we're going to move on. I mean, Chris Ballard has done that already with plenty of his draft picks, right? Traded Quincy Wilson away, high pick. He basically, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, all those guys are gone from that 2017 draft. And again, some people would say, it wasn't a good draft. I think it wasn't a good draft in terms of production for the Colts in the first part of that draft. But I think overall, it just speaks to Chris Ballard just wanting to win and doing everything he can to win and not really getting tied to a player. But I think for Malik Hooker, it's just he's shown so many flashes to be that ball hawk, right? 2017 especially. He was phenomenal. I think he had 3 interceptions in like 4 or 5 games, and then he got injured. And he hasn't put up that production since he got that ACL injury from that Jacksonville game. And so I think he's shown plenty of flashes. You mentioned that Chargers game. I mean, a phenomenal play. I mean, not many safeties in the league can make that play. But then, you go back to the playoff game against Kansas City. He doesn't play. He's injured. He's missed some games that you need him in. I think for the Colts, they're like, we're not going to commit long-term to you if you have not proven that you can play all 16 games and be a reliable guy back there. And so, I get it in one sense, but I also, kind of am like, but he's just such a productive player. He's such a talented player, I should say, and he has potentially, the chance to explode in this season. And so, yeah, for me, it makes more sense now because, he's going to be a free agent after this year. So you get him for one more year, kind of like a prove it deal. Like, this is a contract year for Malik Hooker now, and he has the chance to either fly or flop. And so it'll be interesting to see if this lights a little bit of a fire under him and seeing, maybe he can live up now to that draft potential that the Colts saw there when they took him 15th overall in 2017. So that's kind of my take on the Malik Hooker situation. I was first a little bit surprised, but it makes sense now that I think about it and kind of based off of Chris Ballard and what he has done over the last few years and how he's not afraid to make a mistake. He's cut his losses and move on. And so that's kind of where I'm at in terms of the Malik Hooker situation. Certainly hope that he lives up to that potential and has an incredible career year this year. I really like him a lot, and so I really hope that he does. But ultimately, if he doesn't, Chris Ballard has a plan. He's already drafted Julian Blackmon. Maybe he drafts another safety next year if it doesn't work out, and the Colts move on. But, yeah, that's kind of my take there on that.
Contract years, they do a weird thing to the mind of an athlete. They either push you to play better, or they either push you back or they push you against the wall and you cave in to the pressure. Pressure in the mind. We all know in football practice, football games, we all know we're expected to play our best every single down. We all know we're supposed to rise to the occasion when that is called upon us, called for us to do so. But I think with this contract year, as you said, with Malik Hooker, we're going to expect his best. And Cody, I honestly believe Malik Hooker will bring his best as well.
Yeah, and I certainly hope so. It's definitely do or die now for Malik Hooker, right? It's time. We saw, unfortunately, with Quincy Wilson, when his back was up against the wall, it didn't work out. He didn't rise to the occasion, unfortunately. And so hoping and crossing my fingers that Malik Hooker is a different story, that he gets the message that the Colts are trying to send him. You need to prove your worth and prove that you're worth another contract. And certainly, I think he's got the potential, and I really hope he does rise to that occasion. I certainly think some of the additions the Colts have made on that defensive line will help him out. And so hoping that, a mixture of all that will certainly help him have a great year 4.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Cody, this has been fun. I want to wrap this thing up with a quick, fun, rapid fire. Just 9 quick questions that I just want to kind of throw at you. Some are football, some are basketball, some are just life, just a quick, fun way to wrap this thing up. Then at the very end, I'll let you announce where people can connect with you, listen to you, and see some of the things you're doing right now with your podcast and things like that. Thought or question number 1, will the Colts win the AFC South?
No. That's probably a terrible start, but no.
Who will?
Titans, man, I'm not ready to just write off the Titans. That's kind of where I go there. So
okay. Favorite Indianapolis Colt currently playing, and then favorite Colt of all time?
Man, currently playing's got to be Jack Doyle. I love me some Jack Doyle, man. He's a guy, man, that, yeah, he's just been my favorite for a long time. Man, I got to go Peyton Manning. Like, he's the guy that got me into football. Like, he's the reason why I started following the Colts and started wanting to produce content. I mean, he's a guy that I will forever say is the best quarterback of all time, and I don't care what argument people throw at me. Peyton Manning's my guy, man.
A game you watched you'll never forget?
Certainly that 2009 game against the Patriots. I remember watching that game with my dad. The Colts got down big, and the Colts were undefeated at that point. The Patriots had lost like 1 or 2 games, and my dad went to bed, and I stayed up, and I'm so glad I did because the Colts made that incredible comeback. Obviously, that 4th and 2 call with Kevin Falk, short of the first down, Peyton Manning to Reggie Wayne, Colts walk-off touchdown, they win. Like, that was just my favorite game by far that I've seen in a long time. Unfortunately, I would have said 2006, but really I wasn't into football that much, so it didn't carry as much emotional weight for me as opposed to that. I watched every single game of that year. So, yeah, for me, definitely that game was a game I'll never forget.
Favorite vacation spot?
Ooh. Yeah, so my grandparents always go down to Marco Island in Florida. I love that. It's just beautiful down there. We've been able to stay with them. My friends and I actually went down right before the virus started going crazy. And so I was sitting on the beach when the Colts made the trade for DeForest Buckner. And so I kind of made a quick reaction video on the beach. So you'll have to check that out. It was pretty funny. I was like, I got to put something up. I don't care. So, yeah, that's definitely my favorite spot. Every time I go, it seems like free agency happens. So it's just kind of a thing I love.
It's kind of a Clay Travis thing because I recently saw Clay Travis on Twitter. He's in Florida, and he put a video up on Twitter of him on the beach. Recently, I didn't even know beaches were open in Florida, but hey, there you go. But so kind of a way for you guys to connect right there. Next one, I kind of piggybacking off the last one, the vacation spot. A place you want to go, but you've never been.
Yeah, I definitely want to go to Australia. It always seems like such an interesting place, but I've never been there. That's definitely on my list for sure.
You know, one thing about Australia, it's beautiful, and you don't have to learn a different language. You can speak English. Now, it'll sound different from them, but you can still speak English.
Right, which is perfect. And so, but I've heard it's very dangerous, so I'd have to kind of tread lightly there. But overall, man, yeah, I would love to go to Australia. It seems like a beautiful country.
A job in sports you would love to have.
Oh man, I would love to just be like at the fan, right? Like 1070 The Fan or something like that. Yeah. Just a local media spot where I can talk Colts, wherever that would be, just anywhere where I can talk Colts, man. I would love that. Like I'm friends with Kevin Bowen. I've told him, dude, you have my dream job. I wish I could do that. Maybe eventually down the road, but man, if I can just talk sports and talk NFL, especially the Colts, that's my dream job for sure.
A game from any sport that you would love to attend.
Oh man. I'd love to attend the Super Bowl. I've always said, if the Colts ever get to a Super Bowl, I don't care how much the tickets cost, I'm going to the Super Bowl because I've never been. I think that would be such a cool thing, especially because football is such a unique sport where it's like, there's just one game. Like you have NBA finals, multiple games you can go to. Like for this, it's like do or die. It's this moment and that's it. So yeah. I would love to go to the Super Bowl if the Colts were able to be there. It would have been so fun to go down to that Miami game when the Colts won the Super Bowl, even in the rain, man. It would have been so much fun to watch that game.
Oh, I know. You would have gone crazy. I believe it was when Bob Sanders forced that fumble of Cedric. I think it was Cedric Benson. I think it was a running back at that time. You would have gone crazy during that point, I can tell.
Oh, yes.
Who would win in a game of one-on-one? Two basketball ones to end. Michael Jordan or LeBron James, who would win in one-on-one?
Dude, Jordan, no doubt. I'm a Jordan guy. I got to go with him. I know that'll probably be controversial. I'm just throwing out all the controversial stuff, man, but I'm a Jordan guy personally. I've never really been a fan of LeBron, just because he's beaten the Pacers so many times, but I'm going to go, with Jordan.
Why do you think he has the upper hand over LeBron?
Oh, crap. Okay.
I had to. You set me up for it. I had to do it.
So I'm not a huge basketball guy, so I apologize if I'm like really incompetent in this, but I don't know. I just feel like Jordan in the clutch moments always came up, and I feel like for some of the championships that LeBron had, right, he had some of those superstars around him. And I know there's certain times where he's done it himself, but overall, I think that's just the big reason why he's had some super teams that he's been a part of. So for me, I like a guy like old school Jordan type of thing back in the day. Was just certainly such a revolutionary player. I mean, unfortunately, they are all would be against the Pacers, but I respect Jordan a lot. I think he's just such a phenomenal player. He just changed the game of basketball, and so that's just the big reason why I say Jordan, just because I feel like, for those reasons, I'm just going to go with Jordan.
I know you're not a big basketball guy, but this guy passing in January, I believe it was January 28th, shook everyone. Yeah. One game or one memory you have positively of Kobe Bryant in his playing career?
Yeah. It definitely was his one game where I think it was his last game where he scored like 60 points. I was watching it with one of my friends, and who's a big Kobe Bryant fan. And so it was definitely cool to see him go out like that and just, as he started dominating and coming out and leading, being the team leader, it was such an emotional moment. And it was certainly awesome to see, Kobe getting the love and recognition that he deserves. And so, rest in peace, Kobe. That was obviously such a huge, huge thing. And prayers for his family and just everybody involved. Such a hard situation.
Cody, this has been fun, a lot of fun. I love talking Colts with other people as well. Take some time to let people know, the listeners, where they can connect with you via social media and where they can listen to some of your work.
Yeah, for sure. You can find me on Twitter at CPFelger55. I'm also on Facebook as well. You can find our podcast on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at BTJ Pod, stands for Bring the Juice Podcast. And people ask, why Bring the Juice? Is that even Colts related? Well, it is. And it is because Frank Reich, I think it was last year, I think it was 2018 season, he had a shirt that said "Got Juice," and then it just started to kind of, people started to say it. And so I know it's kind of been something the Colts have started to brand a little bit. And so we were like searching for a name. We couldn't really find a good one that we loved. And so we decided, hey, Bring the Juice sounds pretty awesome. And so, yeah, you can find us on there. You know, we're on YouTube at Bring the Juice Podcast. We're also on all the Apple Podcasts and stuff like that. So you can find us there. I'm trying to be on about every social media platform we can. And it's certainly been a lot of fun, man. We started, I can't remember. I think my first podcast was, so it was that Houston game, the wild card game in 2019 when the Colts won. It was like their first playoff win in a long time. Certainly was and a really awesome game for the Colts all the way around, dominating the Texans, back-to-back meetings. It seemed like just dominating the Texans in all fashions. So we started our podcast. It's certainly been a learning experience for myself, and bringing Derek on has been a lot of fun. I know he brings a lot of energy to it, and we've loved it, man. We've loved doing it. We're just two common guys who work jobs and, normal jobs, and we love to talk Colts. And so we wanted to bring that stuff to our fans and to our listeners rather. And so it's been a lot of fun, man. I really, really love doing this. And we were talking, I think off air, it's like, we love to write. Like, I used to love to write and stuff. I did stuff with my friend Grant Afseth at Indiana Sports Coverage. But like, for me, I found I just love talking, and I love talking about Colts, and I could just, it's just something where I love to just give my thoughts as opposed to just writing them down. And so for me, yeah, I'm just a big fan of podcasts in general. And so definitely want to support all Colts podcasts and all Colts content creators. We know the grind of doing this. Certainly thank you for just the time and energy that you guys put into this. It's certainly, man, it's a grind sometimes, and it's fun to be able to bring content to people and hear all the nice comments. And I appreciate you, man, just having me on. I really do.
Yeah, Cody, man, it's been fun, and it is a grind. Not going to lie to you. Podcasting is a grind, especially when you're working a regular job. I'm working a job myself, and then podcasting, putting up two episodes a week. But it's a fun grind, and so you talk about the grind and you enjoy it, and talk about how it is for you. It's a fun grind for me. I talk to all my friends about it. They think I'm crazy sometimes. Like, how do you do this? How do you juggle a regular job and then juggle a podcast as well? You make it work. You literally just make it work. Yeah. There are times you stay up to watch a game, or there's times you read an article. You're like, why are you so to yourself, or why are you so quiet? There's things I have to do to make sure that the podcast is the way that it should be. So I understand your same aspect as well, Cody. This has been fun, and we can keep going. We'll have you on again down the road. Hopefully, I am hoping Roger Goodell keeps football season and it starts when it's supposed to. Will fans be there or not? I don't know. But I'm just hoping and hoping that football starts on time. Cody, Felger, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate that.
And I quote, "They don't want potential, they want production." End quote. Couldn't have left with a better quote from Cody Felger. Man, that's great. That's a great way to think about how Chris Ballard and Frank Reich are approaching this upcoming season. Hey, yes, Malik Hooker has potential. But hey, Malik, we need you to produce. Hey, yes, Phillip Rivers, he had a bad year last year, possibly his worst statistical season of his career. Yes, we know you have potential to be better. We need you to produce so you're better. Hey, Marlon Mack, produce some more. Hey, Jonathan Taylor, if you step on the field, forget about what the scouts are saying about the potential that's inside of you. We need you to produce. Hey, offensive line, Phillip Rivers came here because of you. Produce every week. Xavier Rhodes, that reality check you claimed you had, produce, sir. Forget about the potential that everyone's saying is there. Produce, produce, produce. Great line. Great conversation with Cody, and that is exactly how the Colts are looking at this season, and Chris Ballard is looking at this season and this team. Hey, potential is great. He don't want potential. He wants you to produce. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. And if you're not on Twitter and you would love to connect with the podcast, send your emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for new podcasts to listen to come across this one. Then remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are more willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. This has been episode 93 of the Jay Stevens Podcast. I'll see you next time.